Hello everyone, this is Perfume Coast, so welcome to my channel. Today's podcast is part 2 dedicated to vanilla, this time around design edition. So without further ado, let's jump into the ocean of perfumes. And the first perfume I'd like to review for you is called Cinema by YSL. But as always, let's first dive into the notes that Fragrantica is listing. So on the top we've got almond blossom, clementine and cyclamen. In the middle there's jasmine, peony and amaryllis. And finally in the base we've got vanilla, amber, benzoin and white musk. So this one came out in 2004, but it's still very much on the market, I think. And as far as I know, the bottle of a newer release is somewhat different from this one. But this one is simply beautiful and so is the juice inside. This perfume is your sweet, translucent vanilla that's done as a perfume interpretation rather than straight gourmand. What I like about it, whilst being sweet, it has this translucency and lightness to it. There's almost a touch of aldehydic accord that it's not old-fashioned though. I think it's achieved by amber. It certainly gets extra classy vibe to this perfume in any case. It's also a bit powdery, and I think aldehydic powdery touch connects somehow airy nature of this vanilla with its own sweetness. There's also a distinct floral undertone achieved by jasmine and peony notes. So this linear vanilla fragrance is again perfumey, sweet, translucent, slightly aldehydic and floral. It really reminds me of sweet black tea that has a bit of vanilla syrup in it or something similar. And talking of similar fragrances, next up is yet another one from similar line, this one by the house Gucci, and this one is called Flora Gorgeous Orchid. But very quickly, let's have a look at the notes that this one is having according to Fragrantica. So essentially the pyramid consists of vanilla on the top, vanilla orchid in the middle, and ozonic notes in the base. So this one has subtle similarities to YSL release, but without that aldehydic amber accord, and therefore, in my view, it's done in a lot more modern way. Similar to Cinema, it's also your translucent fresh vanilla, where extra freshness is achieved by ozonic note this fragrance this time around, which makes all the difference basically, because again, rather than having this vintagey vibe, it gets to this fresh, crisp territory. This perfume is a lot sweeter than Cinema and it's a lot more fruity as well. I personally belong to the camp that does detect a bit of banana fruit in here. By the way, initially I didn't, but probably this perfume is one of those that really needs a bit of maceration to achieve that banana goodness. And banana quality to my nose in here is precisely a fruit part rather than its skin a lot of other people are smelling. So apparently I belong to some sort of banana fruit subclub or subcamp. Oddly, there's no any fruit note officially, so maybe it's orchid that gives off this impression. So overall, this is my fresh, sweet banana containing juice that's so delicious, but also very elegant to be worn as a perfume, of course. And as the fragrance sits, ozonic freshness gets stronger, which shifts this fragrance even further towards this perfumey impression rather than association with fresh banana drink, which is especially the case if I smell my hand up close. Beautiful modern interpretation of a fruity vanilla that's also fresh, ozonic and sparkly with subtle gourmand quality. Talking of fresh vanillas, next up we've got a bright representative of one. This one is by the house Dior and it's called Dior Addict. This one appears to be quite popular up to date in the fragrance community, but nonetheless let's get reminded of the notes that this one is having according to Fragrantica. So on the top we've got mandarin leaf and orange blossom, in the middle there's jasmine sambac, and in the base we've got bourbon vanilla. So this vanilla is also fresh, but here this freshness is delivered by tones of green and herbal undertones. Looking at the notes, we do not necessarily observe an awful lot of green notes other than mandarin leaf or petitgrain, but this strong green quality is such a prominent feature of this perfume. So no surprise that this vanilla, as strong as it is surrounded by multitude of green facets and undertones. But that's exactly what makes this vanilla so unique, and it gives this almost niche-like quality. If I smell my hand up close, I can really tell that this petty grain that supplies this multitude of greenness, because I smell the strong citrusy residue that petty grain normally has. And as the scent develops, vanilla comes to a forefront and gets intertwined with this green aspect, delivering something absolutely fantastic and again unique. So this greenness almost gets, converted to an ozonic accord while still giving off herbal qualities. So imagine your herbal accord that doesn't take away any vanilla sweetness, softness, or certain degree of creaminess. But what it does do to our vanilla is giving it extra quality of being fresh and more complex. It reminds me of vanilla tea that also has some herbs in it, but actually it never becomes a herbal medicinal drink, if that makes sense. So the summary for this perfume would be our herbal, slightly ozonic vanilla that's sweet, soft, and touch creamy. Because of this, it's a beautiful juxtaposition of sweet and bitter accords that's so unique and classy. And now yet another release by the house YSL. This one is called Manifesto. And again, very quickly, let's have a look at the notes that Fragrantica is listing on this one. So on the top we've got black currant, also we've got bergamot and green notes. In the middle we've got jasmine, sambac and lily of the valley, and finally in the base there's vanilla, tonka bean, sandalwood and cedar. So I love this fragrance. This is yet another fragrance that represents green vanilla, but here greenness is done in a slightly different way. Instead of making a herbal bitterish statement, it gives off almondy nutty quality, also because of presence of blackcurrant. Our almondy vanilla has this tangy, freshening addition, typical specifically to blackcurrant. So in the end, our vanilla is soft, moderately sweet, almond fresh, nutty, and a bit creamy, as we also have sandalwood in the base. Yet again, with this one, we have our very unique vanilla forward fragrance that I strongly recommend to test out. The whiffs of this fragrance exude almondy vanilla that's so feminine and non-imposing that it's great to be worn even in summer, probably not on the warmest of days though. So next up is another brilliant release. This is by the brand Chopard, and this one is called Vanilla Malika. So very quickly, let's get into the notes that this one is having according to Fragrantica. So on the top, we've got quite a multitude of notes, incense, lychee and pink pepper. In the middle, we've got bourbon vanilla and Madagascar vanilla. And in the base, we've got apopanax, sandalwood and cashmeran. So this gorgeous red bottle has, juice that's very similar in character. By the way, be careful with that first spray that's initially so strong that it sort of knocks you down for a little while, for a second really. This first spray is powerful, spicy, a bit oriental and ambery. But in just a matter of seconds, I get where all this is leading to. And what it comes to be is our extremely sweet, a bit fruity, red fruit specifically I think, and quite smoky and dense creamy vanilla. It's definitely your evening occasion vanilla perfume for a colder season as well, probably. To my nose, this perfume is very gourmand, where double vanilla dose is coming to a forefront and surrounding features of creaminess, fruitiness and balsamic smokiness are giving me imagery of a sweet, fruity, burnt cheesecake that's so delicious again, but at the same time, not your, mediocre common gourmand, as it's spicy, smoky and dark. Very appropriate for a spooky season as well, of Halloween, nicely bridging imagery of a haunted house, for example, and delicious desserts that one might be having there. So next up is another quite cute release, which is very popular up to date in the fragrance community, having been released in 2023. So this one is by the brand Burberry, and it's called Burberry Goddess, of course. But very quickly, nonetheless, let's get reminded of the notes that this one is having. So on the top we've got vanilla, lavender, cacao and ginger. In the middle there's vanilla caviar. And finally in the base there's vanilla absolute. So this one came out again in 2023, but up to date it remains one of the most popular designer vanilla fragrances. When I first smelled it in the middle of a hype, I could hardly detect any vanilla at all, nor did it come across to me as lavender forward either, contrary to the statements. It came across as something very pleasant, sweet, but nondescript. Perhaps it was because my expectations for either of these notes were very particular. I was probably expecting classical natural vanilla or lavender done in a similar way. But strangely, the fact that vanilla and lavender are a bit synthetic in here, being, interpretation of these notes rather than replicas, and also the fact that neither of these key notes dominates, is exactly what makes this perfume so interesting to me. So what is it that I'm smelling then? It's slightly vanilla-y, slightly herbal composition that's topped up with something sparkly and citrusy, the likes of bergamot or petitgrain, giving off this woody quality, especially up close. Maybe it's delivered by a combo of ginger and lavender. But again, this is a touch sweet interpretation of vanilla that's slightly citrusy, sparkly and herbal with a beautiful woody undertone. By the way, its flanker, Goddess Intense, is a lot different in its approach, as that one is truly dedicated to a highly natural and strong lavender during first part of the fragrance, and the rest of its lifetime is extremely natural, creamy Gourmand vanilla. That one I also keep in my collection as a lavender forward representative. So, and finally, to wrap this video up with, we've got Newbie by the brand Givenchy. This one is called Shalimar L'Essence, but let's get reminded of the notes that this one is having. So according to Fragrantica, what we've got here would be a cluster of notes consisting of Madagascar vanilla, vanillin, iris, musk and rose. So this one has been given a dedicated review on this channel, which link I of course will copy down below. But just as a quick reminder of what it is, a few words here as well. So this one to me is a more modern interpretation of Shalimar line. I'm a real bloodhound when it comes to any indolic overly vintagey qualities such as many would observe in Shalimar line, especially OG, even the way we know it. All this to the point of me being totally intolerant towards, even such flankers as Shalimar Souffle in the blue bottle, which is considered as very light and having little to do with vintagey vibe of Shalimar OG. Well, not to me though, as in Shalimar Souffle, for example, I'm still smelling the same suffocating ingredients amped up by strong jasmine note and the likes of aldehydes. While here, for the first time in history, I do not smell anything like that. What I do detect, however, especially in the air, would be tones of creamy Gourmand vanilla, which otherwise thickness is broken down by, subtlety of something floral, apparently a rose. Indeed, up close, there's a bit of classy traditional ingredient that's apparently a leftover of original Shalimar DNA, but here it's stripped of any heavy qualities completely. So a big recommendation to test this release out if you are like me, who is apprehensive of Shalimar original qualities, but who perhaps would like to have a nice, modern, pleasant interpretation of that original with amped up vanilla creamy quality. But that's it, guys. This wraps up the video. Of course, if you've liked this video, please give it a like. Please consider subscribing and sharing your comments. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.